So, making a frequency table. Frequency is how often something happens. So, making a frequency table with tally marks. Well, a tally mark is just, hey, there's 1, 2, a mark for each time it happens. Okay? So, 3 steps. First, make a table. And when you make a table, like it's on the computer, it's pretty easy to make a table with a box around it. I'm totally fine if when you guys are doing your assignment and you make your table that, like, for example, this table here, if you just had like pattern and, you know, kind of did the boxes like that, right? You don't have to have the box around it. And then like here's a row and there's another row, right? You don't need to like be all fancy with this around it, okay? But if you're on a computer, it's pretty easy to do that. So a quick sketch of a table's fine, all right? So making the table to show each different item. So that's what we got here. We've got our table, the pattern. So in this case, we've got a group of students who recorded their fingerprint patterns. If you didn't know that, everybody's fingerprint is a little bit different. And there are 3 general types. There's a whirl, a loop, and an arc of the fingerprints. So if you look at your fingerprints really carefully, some of them might actually be different from each other. Like some fingers might have the arch, some people might have a loop, some people might have a whirl. And so
My thumbs are whirled.
some of your thumbs might be different than your, like my pointer finger, I think is a whirl. And my thumb, I think is an arch. So anyways, different types of fingerprints. All right. So we've got a group of students here. We've recorded what their fingerprints, like let's say we just look at their thumbs where we've got whirl, loop, 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 arch, loop, whirl, arch, loop, arch, whirl. Phew. All these different things. So in our table, we've got 3 different patterns. We've got a whirl. So in the table there now, we've got a whirl, a loop, and an arch. Now, does it matter if you have whirl, loop, or arch in that order? If you went loop, whirl, arch, that's okay. As long as when you record with it, you're recording the right things. So then, step 2 is just for each item, make a tally mark in the appropriate row. So whirls. Every time you see the word whirl, so there's 1, 2, 3 marks there. And then loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 7 loops. Is that what you guys got?
I got 6.
6. Count them again. Make sure. We don't want to have the wrong number there. 7 of them? All right, good. Arch, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them, I think. I'll tell you. And lastly, is step 3, count the number of tally marks for each item. This is the frequency. So the whirl, there's 3 tally marks, so it's a frequency of 3. The loop, there's 7. And the arch, there's 4.
This is easy.
Now, typically, when you do tally marks, it's more like you're counting a lot of things. Like if I was going to ask the class, how many of you have a birthday in January? And people raise their hands. I would just mark down a tally, right? Or like if we did the whole school, right? It'd be easier just to go around and make tallies real quick. Sometimes you can skip the tally piece and go right to the frequency. But for this case, making a frequency table, this is what it looks like. It's got what is the pattern or the thing you're looking for. Make your tallies, and then count the number of tallies to get the frequency. Okay? So then you can look at that information and say, which is the most frequent?
Loop. Loop has 7.
Loop is. Loop because there is 7. Okay? No, you don't have to. I just wrote that because that's what Grady told me. He said loop because there's 7. So I wrote that down. Okay?
Because I feel like it.
Because it's the most, right? Higher number means it happens more often. Okay? All right. Questions on frequency tables? Okay. Then we're going to go on to the next thing. All right. Next thing is line plots. So, step one, draw a number line. Guess what? For your assignment today, I've gotten the number lines you're going to need to use. Okay? So, that'll make life a little easier for you. Step two, put an X above each number on the number line for each time a number is in your data set. So, we've got students who ran several miles in a week. What's the most frequent number of miles in a run? Now, here is the key. Don't do what I'm going to do here in a minute. So, I see an 8, so I put an X on 8. Oops. Don't do that. So, I put an X on 8. Okay? And then I see a 3, so I put an X on 3. And then I see a 5, so I put an X on 5. What do you notice about my X's?
They're all different sizes.
They're all different sizes. You want to try to keep your X's the same size because the X's are going to build on top of each other.
Okay, good.
And then you can easily visually see which one's the tallest one. You don't even have to count them. Really? You can just see which one's got the highest amount. Whereas in this case, it looks like 5 has more than 8 and 3, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because the X is bigger. So don't do what I did there. Try to keep your X's all as close to the same size as you can. So like for 8 here, there's an X. And then 3, I'm going to try to draw the same size X, roughly. It might not be perfect, but as long as it's pretty close. 5 gets an X. 6 gets an X. And see how I'm crossing them off as I go? That'll help you not repeat things. Now when you get to a double, like 8 has a second X, I just went right on top of my other X. And try to keep them straight up and down so your towers aren't the leaning tower of Pisa.
Isn't it false last year or something?
No.
Oh, I thought it
There's one little sad little
Until one day someone's looking at it.